I'm curious though. So you're doing open source today. I'm curious of
Yeah.
like maybe your background and how you got into engineering. Like, did you go to you have a proper CS degree as well?
No, so I did economics at university, and it was completely the wrong. I I was so bad. And I didn't enjoy it, and I wish I'd kind of like known that I could switch and try other things because. So after that, I kind of went down that path of working in maybe finance related roles and those kind of roles, and none of them really like vibe with me. So, but what I did notice is while I was working in these roles, I noticed that I was always drawn to the products. So I worked at Groupon, I worked at, and like I would always be really interested in how can we make the product better, and it made sense. Like based on that, just some introspection. I felt like it'd be so cool if I could build stuff, or I could design stuff, or I could make things that people use. Because when you have someone who's annoyed at you because your product failed, it's hard to take. And so that kind of began my journey into coding, and it wasn't a short journey. I think some people like say they want to learn to code, and it took me a while. It took me a lot of false starts. Maybe we can discuss this later, but I had to discover the way I would learn in the most effective way. But yeah, anyway, so from there, I kind of got into coding, and the passion was always building products that people can love using, because I'd seen what bad products can do, and the stress they cause, not just the users, but the people who have to explain why their product is so bad, as part of your company.
Yeah. So would you say
So
that the having your ability to code kind of gives you like maybe superpower is not the right term, but
yeah,
having the ability to actually solve problems through code, like has that opened a lot of doors for you?
I definitely feel like it's a superpower.
Yeah.
I would, I can maybe not go that far, but it's almost like being a painter in Venice in the in the Renaissance, or being an industrialist during the Industrial Revolution. You almost like you have this power to build like the future in a way that no one has had prior to this, and so that's kind of what I see. You almost like coding gives you this space where you can create something that no one's ever thought of, and release it to the world and see how they react in real time. So it is a superpower, and it's a well-paid superpower. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I'm very very happy with what I'm getting paid as well. So highly recommend if you aren't engineering today, like open source is a really good like it's a good introduction into like actually working on engineering teams. It's a really cool introduction just to collaborating and solving problems through code. I'm a big fan for obvious reasons. Like this is what I'm doing day to day.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So can you talk a bit about? So you're based in the UK, right? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So what? I'm curious of like how did you get to the point where you're building Remirror? Like what was the story? Like what's the longer tail story of how you got to this point?
I'm so glad you asked. Great question. No, so for me, actually, I had like a weird journey into coding. So I, I'm a very, I find it hard to say, okay, I'm going to do this and then work through it. So the way I learned to code was actually like just jumping around different things, and so actually I learned I did like half a Udacity course on Python. It was an intro to computer science. I'm so grateful for that course. That course
Wait,
gave
how
me like
long ago was that?
so this was in 2014,
Okay.
maybe. No, 2013. It was 2013, 2014. So around that time. So it was kind of like I was kind of like picking things up slowly. I did. There's a lot of stuff I did that wasn't very helpful. But one thing I did learn a lot from was reading through. So Backbone at the time was a big framework. Backbone. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I'm
It was
familiar. Hopefully, some other people are familiar. But yeah,
okay.
basically, watered down version of React.
Yeah. But the really great thing about Backbone was the source code was commented so well that you could actually learn to code by reading the source code. So I would like because JavaScript back then isn't JavaScript now. JavaScript today is like beautiful. You have like destructuring, you have all of this really cool stuff. JavaScript back then, if you wanted to create a class, you had to know about prototype syntax, all of this stuff. So having someone who'd built something that was used by so many people and yet had endeavored to make the source code available, and it was a lot of it was reading it through GitHub. So that was really helpful. I got into CoffeeScript. CoffeeScript was my favorite language. Again, this is all me just doing. I love CoffeeScript. CoffeeScript is just, it's always got a place in my heart. I think going from Python to CoffeeScript made a lot more sense than going from Python to JavaScript. And so I started working at a technical role. So this wasn't as a developer. This was back in 2014. So I was one of those people who, this is just me trying to get into this industry. And I learned that actually I was quite good at coding. No one gave me opportunities, but the one time a programmer was away and there's a problem that needed a bug fix, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, I could fix this, and I fixed it, and and that was, I wasn't yet officially a developer. This is maybe 2015, but for me, that was a turning point when I realized that the stuff I'd learned was actually really beneficial. And even before I was contributing, the GitHub became like my home on the internet. You just like read through projects, like it's like the world's knowledge. I actually see GitHub as more than code. I see GitHub as like, it's like almost like the repository for the world's knowledge. Like,
Yeah.
basically anything, almost anything that's useful can be sort of GitHub. I know I'm bigging you up, but
Yeah.
I even before like this conversation.
I mean, I represent GitHub, but hopefully some GitHub PMs are watching, because they're probably super excited to hear that, the way you explain how GitHub, sort of like the good marketing speak. I think we should add that to the website.
I genuinely, I tweeted this the minute like GitHub got bought by Microsoft. All my friends are saying, "Oh, how can you spend so much on the company?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" GitHub is like, they have bought the gateway to every developer's heart in the world. It's almost like, anyway, I don't want to get into like how businesses work, but for me it's so it's like buying YouTube for 1.6 billion. We don't look at that and say that was too much. It's that kind of purchase. That to me is how big GitHub is and how much love it has. And what Microsoft has done since buying it is actually even better than I expected. They've really like ramped up, giving us like CI builds for free and all this stuff. It's just amazing.
And like,
great job.
Your mention of YouTube is like, it's a really interesting correlation, because YouTube, you organically find yourself on YouTube all the time. Like if you want to learn how to like change your plumbing, or change the oil in your car, like you might go to YouTube first. Like having the sort of visual representation of like how something is done. Like I learned how to bake bread from YouTube. I learned how to write JavaScript from YouTube. Well, some JavaScript, some really bad JavaScript, but there's a wealth of content. I think with GitHub, like being able to have like, I think you saying gateway is actually really apt as well, because it is a gateway to so many other things. Like right now I'm using OBS to actually stream this. OBS is an open source software that's actually available to me. I can see how it works. I can contribute to it. I can learn how to do it, and that could give me another job into some other streaming software, because I have that knowledge, and someone's throwing it all out there for me to learn, and I could just walk in there and be like, I have the expertise for doing video codecs and processing and working with bandwidth and like low bandwidth situations on OBS, which is an open source software which will then get me my foot in the door for something else. So it's I'm right there with you.
Yeah, you're doing well. Your company's doing really well. So like GitHub was just became almost like my home on the internet. I was using GitHub more than I was using social media. I still do now. It's sort of like so what. I think the way I learn is very broad. There are people who can be very narrow and focused in their learning. They can say, okay, I'm going to learn this and then learn it. I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. I have to almost follow the trail of thoughts until it leads me to something. And eventually it led me to learning React. I learned about Ember. I kind of landed maybe more on front-end development. And up until that point, I'd always kind of seen like contributors to open source as just these special people, they're like really smart and I'm just a learner. And there's this, even though by that point now I had a job, I was working full-time as a software engineer. I was doing some good things for the people I worked for. I built some things that were, okay, let me jump back. So one of the things that I did in the company before I became like an official software engineer was, and it's still live now for the company I worked for. It was an ad tracking thing, but I like as someone who hadn't had any what's it called, like any CS training. It was just purely from learning on the internet. I brought Browserify into the product. I brought unit testing. Our company didn't have any unit testing. That's how bad it was. All of these things, and I brought them because I learned about them by reading code on GitHub, and so it was almost like open source. Even though I wasn't contributing yet, it was contributing to me in like in a huge way.
So how did you
So that,
learn?
that's
So did
how,
you learn on the job, or how did you do your day job but still learn all this new stuff? Like you mentioned reading GitHub, but like
yeah,
that sounds kind of daunting for someone who's like just trying to keep their head above water and like ship
yeah.
features.
Um, so I definitely did learn on the job. I kind of got to the point where, because the job I was doing was very repetitive, and I really struggled to do the same thing over and over again. So I started trying to automate what I was doing. So I would justify the fact I wasn't working by the fact that actually the work I'm putting in is to make me faster. And it actually did. I built me and a friend. So we both kind of were in the same journey. He'd done a CS degree. I hadn't, but we were both like realized actually we're very technical. We're more technical than anyone else, or like we have a natural interest in what we're doing. So we started pairing up. We built an animations module. So the company I work for, I don't want to give a name.
Yeah, that's
You
fine.
take what you can get, but they're that kind of company who, you know, when you leave a website and then they send you an email saying, hey, you didn't finish doing what you were doing. Do you want to finish your or do you want to finish shopping? And they have all these pop up windows that show up. So what we did was we built an animations tool that basically made it when you were leaving, rather than just showing, because for some reason they just showed. We built this so that you would animate in, you'd have like little like really cool things happening, and yeah. So this was my introduction to. So I learned on the job, but I justified it in my mind by saying I'm not using my company time for waste. I'm actually using it to make the company better. Um, Even though we did get some stick, like, oh, you're not meeting targets for this week. It's like, just wait in 2-3 weeks time.
Yeah.
And we did. We ended up increasing the productivity of the whole team, and
Do you
it was
feel
a
like
really good
that
time.
you advance your, because you 2013 2014 though do Udacity courses, like not having a CS degree, do you feel like you leveled up as an engineer by doing some of this discovery?
As in, do you think
Like you
like
said,
that's
junior to senior to staff, or like do you feel like the skill set that you learned, like are you able to enjoy that investment of your time today?
oh no, 100, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. It was well worth the time. I think what I would advise to anyone who's trying to get into the journey is not to put pressure on yourself, because I think sometimes you see someone who's like, oh, I started learning 6 months ago and now look at me, I'm working for, I don't know, a big company. If I'd been like judging myself by that standard, I probably would have felt really like negative. But each person has a different journey. Each person has a different way of learning, has a different thing that vibes with them. Sometimes I watch like tutorials online, and they'll be like, do this now. If you're not doing it, you're not learning. I don't learn like that. I learn by like just watching and just getting a stream of information, and then maybe a month later trying out what I learned. It's a very like almost like a very distant kind of learning, and it's so weird. I learn about I've learned about Docker, I've learned about Kubernetes, I've learned about all of these things, and I've never really used them. But just that knowledge in the back of my head means that when a problem comes, it's like I have this arsenal. And Google exists, right? So even if I don't know the details, I can find out. I can spend like a day, and now I'm an expert, or I'm much not an expert, obviously, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can
but you
pretend
know
I
enough.
am.
Yeah, I totally get
Yeah, I
it.
know enough. So yeah, there's I think each person has to find their way of learning. It can be daunting if you're looking at the world through someone else's experience and trying to get into an industry the same way someone else got into the industry. So like for example, I don't have kids, but if you had kids, it would be a different journey. Or I don't if like there's different constraints you have to kind of put into it, but you can still do it. And if you can find a way to do it and enjoy it, it's just the most beautiful thing. So yeah.
Excellent. So, I guess my follow up question, and I want to transition us into talking about your project too as well, which is Remirror. Um, I know what Remirror is, and I know it as like a CMS. I'm familiar with React. I'm familiar with Prosemirror, but do you want to give explanation of the Cliff Notes, and we can jump in soon to actually walk through the project documentation and stuff too as well.
Yeah, so documentation isn't great right now, but yeah, we'll we'll get to that. So
Contributions welcome.
yeah, contributions. Oh my god, 100% welcome. Thank you. So yeah, so Remirror was started as just, can I do this? It was more of like I'd seen people build text editors, and I wondered how I would go about doing it. So yeah, so basically what Remirror aims to be is a universal React text editor. That's what it aimed to be at the beginning. And so you can run it on React Native, you can run it on React, you can use it on mobile, you can use it in any environment where JavaScript can be run. Remirror can run. It can do that right now, except for React Native. React Native, I'm hoping to maybe convince a sponsor to give me the month to code that in. I was actually trying to pitch my company right now, okay. Like, hey, give me 2 weeks, I can build this into your product, and they're not budging yet.
Is your company using Remirror, or is this?
No. It's just something I'm
so you mentioned sponsors, though. What do you? I guess can you go in more details of what do you mean by sponsors? Like people are actually paying you for open source?
Yeah. So GitHub again, GitHub, amazing. So like last year, I think they announced a sponsorship program, and it just makes it that you can show your work to the world, and then ask people who feel blessed or who feel like your work has impacted them to maybe give a bit back. And what I found is, as a contributor, at least maybe it's different if you live in a different country, but in the UK you have access to a lot of things, and then GitHub sponsors works well there. As a contributor, it just makes it a much more frictionless process of asking for money, because that can be hard, right? It's like, oh hey, I need to eat as well. Whereas if you just have a GitHub sponsors button, you can just, that's a better way of requesting. So what actually happened is that someone reached out to me saying, oh, they love the project, they love Remirror, they'd like to use it. How would I like to but there's some things that we need to add to make it that they can use it properly. And so this was my first GitHub sponsor. So I reached out to them and said, hey, I'd love to do it, but I didn't want to have to go through getting, it would have been really difficult to figure out a way of invoicing them and doing all that stuff. It becomes really professional. And I knew I'm working another job. I can't afford to it would have been difficult.
Yeah.
So what I did was just said, oh, here's my GitHub sponsors link. I created one payment amount and said, if you sponsor me, you can either sponsor me for this amount or 3 tiers actually. This tier, or this tier. They chose the lowest one. But anyway, they've been sponsoring me now for 4 months. They were my first sponsor, and I'm really grateful to them. In fact, they're the reason why I'm happy to be on this podcast with you, because I was actually at a point where it was almost like I kind of reached the end of where Remirror for one person could be developed. It was getting to the point where it's like, okay, I can't give this much more time because it's not viable. So what sponsorship has done has allowed me to see actually there are people who are willing to pay for this and who actually see value in this being in the world. And even if a sponsorship isn't quite what you'd make in a company, it still feels really good to know that like something you created, something that didn't exist before, is like people are actually excited enough about it to
someone's perceiving value from the stuff that you're actually working on. I think it's like the difference of like joining Twitter and having 0 followers compared to having 100 followers. Like what you're putting out there, people are actually interacting with and appreciating it, and like they're still choosing to follow you. And I think with GitHub sponsors, it's the same thing. Like also, like you can get a star on your repo, you can get a fork, you can get a contribution, but when someone perceives value because they're actually getting something out of this sort of relationship between you and the code and their product or whatever they're working on, like it creates this bond. And I definitely feel you on that. It's also, I didn't realize that you were at the point where you maybe weren't considering continuing to contribute to Remirror.
I wouldn't have killed it. I wouldn't have killed off a project, but it was just you can if you look back at the history, there's like a period of like 4 months where the only updates are just upgrading dependencies, and that to me is just, I'm trying to okay, this is just my philosophy. At least maybe it's not the same for everyone, but for me, you have like there's different phases of coding. There's like especially with a project as ambitious as Remirror, it takes time to like almost upload the project into your brain. So like taking a month off is basically it's almost like you come back and you've forgotten everything. You're like, what was I writing? What was I doing? Yeah. So there needs to be like almost like a continuous work. And if there's nothing coming back, it's almost like you get nothing from it. So I kind of given up on being able to really make Remirror what I wanted it to be. But what the sponsorship allowed me to now basically use all the free time I had I shouldn't have. Maybe it wasn't healthy, but I love working on it. So like use all the free time I had to just work on this and try and make it into something that I can be proud of. Something that like that's my ambition is to build a world class editor. So I want that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
inspirational. And like on that note, I'd love to transition us to be able to look at your project too as well. So I'm gonna switch over to sharing my screen so you can see it and the guests can
sweet.
see it as well. Oh, there we go. Sharing the whole. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, I should have had this prepared. There we go. All right, so you should be able to see my screen, um, and everybody else should be able to see the screen too as well. I'm also looks like Yogi's actually super interested in getting his hands on contributing into Remirror and using it. I think from just hearing this, I highly recommend it. If anybody else is interested in contributing to this project, I think this is now the portion of the stream that's going to get exciting. Because yeah, Iffy, feel free to take it away. Let me know. I'm looking at the docs right now because I had thrown that in the chat. Also,
That's
chat, if you have questions, help direct the conversation. Feel free to interact with us. We'll take a look at that and we'll answer those questions. So I've got the docs and I've got the repo itself. So I see Benji here. You
yeah. So
mentioned him earlier.
he's been helping. He's been helping out. So Benji, just shout out to Benji. He's been a real help. He's been working with me like intermittently, well, every Thursday actually, just to get it up and running. We've got some really exciting stuff coming in the future. So okay, what I'll do, I'll show you where the project is right now in terms
Yeah.
of and then I'll tell you about what's coming.
Yeah. Is there
So
like a demo or an example of the Remirror
yeah.
somewhere?
So if you go to the docs again,
Yep.
and then click on docs, documentation. Yeah. Okay, so firstly, the design is completely changing. The docs right now are very bad. So this is a place where contributions are welcome. The good thing is I've been commenting all the code. So if someone is comfortable reading comments in code, it's all there. It's just I haven't yet transitioned it to this feature. So if you click on showcase, if you just click on the caret right next to it,
Yeah.
you can't click on it's a bug in that thing. So if you click on the caret, yeah, see,
Okay.
then click on social editor.
So I mean, this is very apparent. If you have the comments sitting and waiting for someone to, or yourself or somebody else to just take the comments, move them to this page, like that sounds like a really cool, like good first issue for someone to get
Yeah.
their hands dirty in this how this looks.
So this is an editor built with Remirror. So you can do like pretty cool things, like if you can do mentions. So if you start typing at and then a letter,
Oh,
so
nice.
you can select stuff. And
So I will mention. Are these all people within the org?
these are random names, so it won't be
okay.
anything. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
anything.
so it's not actual real people. They're not going to get a notification somewhere.
You can also do tags, which is the same as apps.
Okay.
So you can do tags. This was basically I was trying to copy the Twitter editor experience.
Gotcha.
You can do if you do space now, you can do emoji as well, so it adds a bit more than the Twitter.
Oh,
so if you do
nice. Where are these emojis coming from?
So these are just native emojis. You can switch them out. Like there's an option to switch them out into actual images. So, but that yeah. So you can either render them as native or render them as images. And when you render it, you can choose. So this is like the editing side of things. There's also a renderer, a React renderer for Remirror, which allows you to.
There's a question in the chat around would this be used? Is this specifically for React projects? This
It's a great question. Broaden? Oh, am I saying it wrong? Apologies.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah. Anyway, that's a great question. So the reason, like, so this version, the old version, which is what we're looking at, was purely for React. I was like, let me build a React editor. The new version is cross framework, and
Gotcha.
what I mean by that is I've abstracted everything out. So we have a core Remirror core, and I've already built on top of that a DOM editor. So if you don't want to use any framework, you just want to do pure DOM, Remirror is for you. It gives you the same kind of API, but just using the pure DOM. I've got a React editor as well. The next one I want to tackle is Angular. I haven't used Angular since version 1, so I'm sure that's going to be fun. But this is I'm really targeting working on this for the next 6 months to really get it to a place where I feel like we can release. There's going to be a release at the end of this month, and so it'll be like a pre-release. But I'd love to by the end of the year have like what I would say this is usable. Go for it.
Yeah.
So that's my goal, and part of that would be to have an Angular environment. Perhaps explore looking at Svelte and other frameworks. But It's already has all the building blocks for that. And this is actually where, because I don't know Angular, and because I don't know Svelte, and because I don't know, I'm most familiar with React. This is where contributors can come in.
Nice.
So one of the pieces of documentation I do want to write is how to build, firstly, your own extension. Okay, in fact, we haven't talked about extensions, but how to build your own functionality on top of Remirror, because this project doesn't work unless people feel comfortable contributing. So that's the goal. So if you go to WYSIWYG, here as well, also it does, because I was trying to do, if you go back to social, because I was trying to make it like a Twitter thing.
Sorry, say that again.
I was trying to make it like a Twitter experience.
Gotcha.
So if you just start typing HTTP, just type twitter.com. I don't know.
Okay. I lost my pizza. Okay, excellent.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's auto linking. And this stuff is kind of given to you for free. And this old version,
it even gets my pizza TLD too as well. So it's pretty smart.
Yeah, only the best. So yeah. So if you go to WYSIWYG editor, which is more of a traditional editor.
Okay. Yeah, I like what I just saw so far. Like, I already know exactly where I'm going to use this in my project, because we were chatting offline where I have a text box, but it's pretty unfulfilling. Like, there's not much you can do with it. So super excited to try that out. So this looks like the traditional like a WordPress or even like if you were using Medium. So
yeah, exactly.
Hello, this is Brian.
So you can like make it bold. It's just like a typical editor. Oh, so no, this one doesn't. I haven't added. I've kind of separated out the functionality.
Okay.
So you could add that functionality in, but I was trying to show like different aspects.
But this will give me my to-do list.
Yeah.
Oop, I can spell eggs.
And if you double click stuff, it has floating menus. It has all the stuff, like links.
Oh yeah, it's very much like your Medium style editing.
Exactly. So and all this stuff. This version again, it wasn't built in the best way. So like the API wasn't as friendly to users. But the new version, because of just focusing on one API, focusing on hooks for React and different APIs for it makes it a lot easier. So you can create an editor by including a hook. You can just literally say to go back to social editor, to add that mentions functionality, it says use social mentions.
Yeah.
And you wire it up. You obviously wire it up to your UI, but it gives you these variables. So it gives you like the currently selected index, the value of the currently selected items, and now you have a social editor.
Excellent.
So it's really it's really nice. I'm excited. I'm excited to be introducing it at the end of this month.
Yeah, and Sean is actually asking about Monoco and how it compares to Monoco. Monoco, I believe Monoco is another WYSIWYG editor.
But Monoco is more for coding. Monoco is a code editor, so
gotcha.
It relies on monospace fonts. So it has different constraints. I don't think it uses content editable. So
gotcha.
because this is underlying this is using Remirror, it interacts with the content editable and uses Remirror to manage the state of the editor. Interesting, you should ask about Monoco. So if you go back to the Remirror repo, so I'm going to start talking about the next version because the old version isn't cool enough. So if we go to pull request, again, this is still very early days.
Yeah.
And this will probably a couple of months of building before we can. And if you scroll down to go to closed, I think.
Okay.
So I also recently got test. So only this week I got tests running again. So another really cool thing about this project is that right now test coverage is about 60%. I would love to get it up to 80%. The tests are written in a really easy to understand way. If you want to start contributing to the next branch by adding tests, I would love that. That's one way you can contribute. And the great thing about writing tests is that you actually gain a deeper understanding of a project. It really is a good way to understand, okay, this is how Remirror works. And so there's a lot of extensions I have added. Okay, so extensions, let me just explain what extensions are.
Go ahead.
Everything, functionality is added by adding an extension. So the mentions that were added is by adding the mentions extension. Each piece of functionality. So bold is an extension. Italic is an extension. Underline, yeah, you get it. They're all extensions.
Yeah.
The new version adds another abstraction called presets, because I found that actually people didn't just want to be, you don't want to have to import like 20 different extensions before you can get started. So I've added a preset functionality which groups together extensions. So you can say formatting presets. That doesn't exist yet, by the way, but or lists presets or table preset, which imports all of like the extensions you need to have that functionality. So that's something that's added in a new version. But if you click on actually, if you go back to open, I know I'm sending you around.
It's all right. Yeah, I'm definitely I'm feeling your excitement of the project. Like, I'm excited about this project.
Now, if you click next,
Yep.
The next branch, so it's still a draft branch, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna call out in the comments someone found a broken link too as well. Yogi did. Contributions welcome. So if you
Oh yeah.
fix that one.
Oh wow, yeah.
So what's this next PR? Is this your next version? Is that what the goal is?
Yeah, so it's the next version. So you can see there's a lot of work has been done.
Yeah, that's a lot of changes.
Yeah, like the thing is, I started this as a rewrite, and I probably ended up rewriting it maybe like 2 or 3 times. It's weird. You have like this goal. Okay, this is what it's going to be, and as you write it, you realize, oh, this is impossible. And then you like change it, and then you realize actually it was possible. You just were doing it wrong, and then you change it back. So it's been like that for the last maybe 2 months. You scroll down.
Yep.
So like I think there's a link. There should be a docs link.
Did I completely miss it?
No, I don't think you did. If you scroll back up.
Or I can docs.
You should. Sorry, scroll back up again. Does it not?
Did it hide?
It should be... Oh, okay.
It might have squashed the docs link.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. In that case, okay, then go back to closed, and then the most recent merge. That would be the best. Yeah.
Back to pull request. Head back to closed. Yeah, I'm seeing the excitement in the channel about this. About the editor too as well. Like I'm just blown away at the social editor of something. I've never had the opportunity to build something like that. So like I know they exist, and I kind of know how it works, but to have you already go through the struggle of making it work, I'm like, oh cool. Let me just take this down there. I happen to already be a sponsor of you, so like I will support the work. And I hope everybody else jumps on board too as well. Contributions and sponsorship. So which closed PR are we looking for?
So the first, if you click the first one, it's just the most recent. Gotcha. So in this version, so in the old version, I was using emotion. In this version, I've changed to using Linaria because people didn't want to have to import emotion. Linaria basically it extracts the styles from it, so you kind of use it like emotion, but the styles is in a separate.
So this is for your CSS and JavaScript, is that?
Yeah, CSS. So like the yeah. Anyway, so some of the stuff doesn't work on this, so don't try and go into the mentions. The style's completely broken. But if you click on this, I'll show you like the reason I was going to show you about this was because someone mentioned Monoco, and we're actually using Monoco in this new version. So if you click on Playground,
yep,
it will take a while because we still haven't got stuff in. But what we're doing is we're building a way for people to very quickly get started with Remirror. So what you can do, again, the styles are all broken. It doesn't look like much. You can actually select the extensions you want to use. So if you click Auto Link extension, and then base key map, so it automatically starts building like the editor for you.
Oh, gotcha.
So you can't see it right now because there's no styling. But if you click just underneath, in that gray panel, the gray panel below the editor, towards the top. I know it's hard to just yeah. And you can start typing.
Okay. So like auto linking. There we go.
Yeah, so you can see all that stuff working. Now, if you click like bold extension and then italic extension. And then italic. So the goal, this is basically going to be a way. We're adding. So this is being driven a lot by Benji. I think he learned a lot about this from GraphQL and near Monoco integration.
Yeah.
I think Nikki was talking about.
Yeah, Ricky. That. Yeah, Ricky was like literally the last open source Friday we did, and he talked through his Monoco and his broken styles as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you can, and it's really cool. So like, it's literally a way to raise bugs. If someone notices a bug in one of the extensions, this is going to be a way similar to how TypeScript Playground works or Babel Playground works. You'll just send us the link. The link will be a permalink, and we can fix those issues. It's a way to get started. You're going to be able to export it to your own package, and you immediately have an editor that works for you. So this is kind of the future of how editors at least will be started. You may obviously customize it, but you can see that it kind of gives you all the stuff that you need, and you can see like how an editor will look. Obviously, the styles are really basic right now.
Yeah, but if I were to take this, like, granted, I install Remirror on my project, I can copy and paste this into my own project, and it's just working right off the bat.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
So,
I'm curious if this also have the social plugins here, or is this only for the?
It will, but you won't, like, because this again we're still thinking about how to. So one of the things, the tooling around Remirror is going to have to like improve. So firstly, the writing extensions isn't hard, but I think I'm a bit lazy. I like things being as easy as possible. So one of the things I'm working on is an ESLint rule for Remirror. So extensions are kind of like autocomplete for you. So there's a concept. There's things that can change when the editor starts, and there's things that should never change. So there's certain options you can pass in. Right now, you have to declare this is static and this is not static. But what the lint rule will do is basically auto infer what's static and what's not, and like do that for you. There's like a lot of things that will just kind of automate for you and autofill for you. The second thing we want to add to integrate with this playground is a meta plugin. So the meta plugin will add a Babel plugin that adds metadata to each extension. So what that would do is, if you scroll down and see the mention extension. Does it not scroll?
No.
Okay. See, these are the things that we haven't yet. We've been working on really big screens and we didn't test that out. So apologies.
Actually, I know how to. Can I just zoom out?
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, and awesome. It doesn't have overscroll either. Yeah, it might be a little challenging to get this to work.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Don't worry about it. So mention it again. It doesn't do anything right now, but what we want is that if that Babel plugin is used to build it, then it will tell you all the stuff that's available on it. So it can automatically build the functionality into this editor. So we really want to make the playground a first-class citizen of Remirror, and allow you to experiment with stuff without having to, spin up your own environment or do all of this difficult stuff. So yeah, that's pretty cool, and that's in the works. And if you go back to the project,
yeah, that's I mean, hats off to you to have so much. I know Benji's been helping you have some contributions, but I think I got a good grasp of the project. It looks like we're gonna have like a nice area for if I have an idea, I want to sort of playground it out, copy and paste it into my project. It works. So yeah, I think this might be something I want to work on in my next release, the release after the next one for my project, because like I mentioned that we have a chat box, not a chat box. We have a note-taking section of my project, which I'll show you in a sec. I'll show the listeners because I showed you, but so if I go into a project and I want to write notes on a project, this box down here is uninspiring. And I'd love to have that social example literally just be the same thing. So if I type in pizza, that would be amazing if I could just have pizza to show up. So you have one more user of Remirror for sure, and like,
oh, awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I will upstream some fixes too as I find them. I also just want to give a quick shout out to Remirror too as well, because Remirror is I guess the underlying technology on top or beneath your Remirror. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, 100% Remirror.
Okay, so like, what's the difference between Remirror and Remirror? Is like Remirror just basically has a little, I guess the social thing is one of the things.
Yeah, so Remirror is like I don't know how to say it. Remirror drives the interaction with the content editable.
Gotcha.
So we are using the Remirror APIs to do a lot of the work, and but the thing about Remirror is that it makes the content editable work. So if you try and just work with content editable on your own, you're gonna have a lot of problems because it's a very broken implementation. It wasn't built. It was built in bits and pieces without really thinking about how the whole thing could be cohesive. Remirror is kind of built to solve a lot of the problems that content editable has, and it does so really well. Obviously, there are sometimes browser things that come up, and the maintainer, I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, so I won't say it, but he's a really smart guy, really, really smart person. Like, shout out to him. We're really grateful for him building something so beautiful. But he's he's a very good maintainer. So, but the problem I found with Remirror is that there's a lot of moving pieces. So you have to think of schema, nodes, marks. Everything is granular. Like something is like, so the next phase of development of Remirror. Right now, I'm working on like the external API. So
Yeah.
I want to give you stuff for free, like mentions extension. But there's going to come a time where you want to say, for example, say, oh, I want to have it that when the person clicks this button, it makes this uppercase or it makes this part lowercase. That's actually really hard to do with Remirror. You have to almost have a PhD because you have to say, okay, this is a node, this is a mark, okay, find where the position of that node is, da, da, da. And there's so many things that you have to do. So like the abstraction level is very, and just to those who don't understand what I mean, but you have to think about every step. What I want Remirror to do is just take what Remirror is doing and then like package it in a way that it's like, I want to do this, and there's just one command for doing it in Remirror. So Remirror is like it allows you to use Remirror under the hood to get that great browser support.
Yeah.
But on top of it, it adds support for React. It adds support for Angular in the future. It adds direct support for the DOM, but in a way that that you can like enjoy. So that's the goal.
Excellent. So going back to Remirror, I wanted to transition us to like, we had a lot of like callouts for good contributions. I think YG Dev, which is Yogi, he's definitely going to be jumping into your contributions. I'm curious if anybody else has any other questions around how to contribute to the project, but I know this is you've really started kicking up the pace for this project, but like, how can someone contribute today? Could you walk us through that? I did see the edit on the docs itself. Actually, let's did we lose it? There we go. I did notice that there's the edit on GitHub as well.
That may not work anymore.
It may not work.
Did I delete the master branch? I don't know. Oh, it does. Okay, cool. Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
work. Cool.
So we need to fork this.
Yeah. So if you want to start with the docs.
Yeah, could you talk through how I can find? I think that's a really good low effort thing to do. If you have the code, could you give an example of like where you have the comments in the code? Do you have like a file in mind?
Oh yeah, sure. So if you go to actually go to @Remirror and then core.
Just core. Okay.
Yeah. Then go to source. So everything is this is a TypeScript project. So okay, I'll talk about some of the 4 goals in the rewrite.
Yeah.
So one of the things is that this is going to be a TypeScript native project. What that means to me is that I want the code to guide you, to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
So when you add an extension to your editor, it should immediately update, like the type should immediately reflect all the new commands that are available. So if you add the bold extension, it should immediately allow you to run toggle bold. You don't have to look at documentation. The documentation is in line. So that's one of the goals of Remirror, and it's actually a joyful experience. For example, with like the mention extension, one thing it exposes is that I have this use extension hook for React things. So you can say use extension, mention extension, and then the next parameter automatically fills all the handlers that are on use extension. So you can literally just say use extension, whatever, add on change handler, and it knows it has this on change handler. It knows it has an on exit handler. It knows all of the stuff that's available for that extension because the TypeScript support is first class. So that was one of the first things. Second was universal editor. I still want to get this in. I know exactly how I would build a WebView implementation of this, so it supports React Native. It supports what's that one? Okay, it supports Flutter. It supports any implementation.
Yeah.
Of any, it can live inside a WebView and then expose bindings to the native layer. So the editor is just a WebView, which is cool. And then you issue commands into it using like the native UI. So that's something I really would love to do. So if anyone wants to sponsor me to do that, you know what to do. But anyway, if we go into extension,
yep.
And then extension base. So okay, I don't know if this is the best one. Yeah, so you can see like some of them, this is quite dry. Yeah. If you scroll down, if you go to like extensions are fundamental to the way the Remirror works by grouping together, whatever. And so there tends to be examples. I try and put in examples. I try and like make it readable, if you mean. So the majority of the core code is commented like this, because it's been such a big like push to get this new version out. one thing in the new version is that extensions all have your own package. So you have extension for bold, extension for italic, and in that drive, there's things that aren't commented as well. So this, but a lot of it, if you understand like the core, you can probably infer what stuff is doing.
Yeah.
So I would love to have people write documentation on the bold extension. And the thing about comments and documentation, it doesn't have to be that rich. It can just be, this is a bold extension. Weirdly, I actually feel like code commenting is good, even if a comment says I have no idea what's happening. It just gives the person reading the code like, oh, okay, cool. I feel better.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening either.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes a code comment isn't just to express my knowledge. Sometimes it's to express my lack of knowledge, or to say, hey, if you know a better way, please change. This is something I rushed together. So that's so I've tried as much as I can to make sure that commenting in the code base is really cool. There is something I do want to highlight. So another goal. So there were like 4 goals I had with the new version, and hopefully I'm achieving them. One of the goals was to make Remirror extensible. So in the old version, you have what you call a Remirror manager.
Yeah.
And the manager, it manages so there's like 4 levels. So you have extensions which add functionality to the editor. Then you have like React, which is your view layer. And in the middle sits the manager. The manager takes all the extensions and then is used by the React view layer integration to send stuff to Remirror. So the manager is like it. I don't have a diagram, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no worries.
But what the manager, what I wanted people to be able to add like their own custom functionality to the manager. So what I've done in this new version is that everything that was once native to the manager is now just an extension. So the extensions power even like the core functionality. So one of the core things about Remirror is the schema. You create a schema to say, okay, I'm going to have this editor will support bold, italic. So your schema declares the functionality that's supported. But even the schema now is being generated by an extension. And the way it does that, if you scroll down, or if you search for onCreate. Yeah. Okay. So this is the interface with the extension lifecycle methods. That means every extension has access to these lifecycle methods. You keep scrolling. So onCreate is called right at the beginning. So this is like when the manager first starts up, it calls every extension is onCreate. Then onView happens when the view Remirror has a view that is sent through. So this is a call when the view is available. Then on state update, that's called every time the Remirror state updates. And then on destroy is called when. But by just by having these lifecycle methods, you literally allow yourself to. The code base becomes like infinitely customizable. That's not a great thing. I mean, infinite customizability is basically all code is infinitely customizable. So what I've tried to do is make it customizable, but in an understandable way.
Yeah. I just wanted to call out Yogi had mentioned, he had a quick question about React Native and support. You had mentioned earlier, but do you want to mention that again? Does Remirror support React Native?
So Remirror, the core goal is for it to be universal. So I know how I would build support for React Native into it. And this is one of the goals of this version. I've mentioned to my company about giving me maybe a couple of weeks to integrate Remirror into our project. And in doing so, because it's a React Native project, in doing so, I would have that functionality by default in Remirror. I haven't yet heard anything back. So it's something I'm really pitching for, because I know in my head, I know what to do, but it still takes that time. It's like a month of work maybe.
Yeah.
And when I say a month, it probably means even more. I tend to underestimate. So but it's something I really, really want to do. If people adopt Remirror enough, if companies say that they're interested in using this, if it's something that people really want to succeed, then I don't see a reason why it's not in the code base within the next 2-3 months. That's the goal.
Yeah.
But just know that's what I want. I don't want, again, I think it's a lazy part of me. I don't want to have an editor that works on the web and then have to do something different for my app. I want to have the same code being used. And there's so many cool ideas. Okay, let me ramble. So for the way it would work, I'll give you the breakdown of how it would work on React Native, is that you would basically have the same editor, but you just would remove all the UI around, so there'll be no buttons and stuff in the web view.
Yeah.
So that would just be placed in, and then there'll be a bridge that communicates across. So when a command is when something happens in the web view, it communicates saying, okay, this has happened to the React Native layer. And when something happens in the React Native layer, it communicates back to the web view. And so that's the kind of directionality. But the cool thing is that because you're in a sense building a web view, what you need is what I started like drafting up just in my spare time is like a Babel macro. So you would basically just like import your code as normal, and the macro would transform that code that's meant to be run in a web view into a string, HTML string that just inserts itself into your React Native web view.
Gotcha.
Bam, you have an So it like those things excite me, but it's like I can't start it because I know starting it and not finishing it sometimes is worse than not starting it. So it's just about trying to find a way to do it.
How do you approach that? Like, so you have thought through how to build this. So how do you approach?
Yeah.
Do you write up like RFCs, or do you write this down so that way if anybody else has bandwidth, they can do it, or are you not at that point in the project?
That's a good idea. I've written down some notes on that. I haven't like, that's no, I don't. So to be fair, the whole RFC process, I've never really used it, and I would love to. I don't know why I haven't used it. I think I haven't used it because actually I've looked at projects that use it, and I actually find it quite hard to use because it's a fork of a project. So it's hard to know where the RFC exists unless you have the direct link to it, at least in the implementations I've seen.
I might have a solution for you.
Yep.
So let me see if Vercel has one open. So we have this new feature at GitHub, which is the discussions. And the good thing about this is like normally RFCs have to live in another repo and it's a whole nother experience. But if I look for RFC for Vercel or for Next, you can see they now have a discussion, and then you outline your approach as like a blog post in Markdown. And then you get your comments.
Nice.
And they're also, the cool thing about this too as well is that they're, if you wanted to, they're threaded. So this sounds like a way, I don't know, like a thing to do. And I can enter, I won't do this now because I have no idea what this person's saying, but I can thread my comment based on this piece of feedback. So instead of you're in a repo with a bunch of issues, like this is the previous way people were doing it, or you have a wiki, or you're in a whole nother platform, like you're in Google Docs, like now you can have your RCCs directly in the discussion as well. So this is a beta feature. I'm happy to get you access to this as well. It is beta. But if you wanted to write your thoughts out, I'm sure everybody on the call who's super interested in seeing the next step, like Yogi's I know Yogi does React Native as well for his job. They can provide feedback on how they would see this and how to implement it. So like your approach to the Babel macro, like perhaps someone could be like, hey, I prototyped your macro for you. Here it is. Or I'm going to prototype this in my React project because I have a branch and we have an engineering cycle where we can actually work on this because we're down a sprint, or we have a dead sprint where we don't have anything.
Yeah. That's actually I think this is where I feel I need to learn a lot in open source. One of the things I've really been like, it's really helped me is just working with Benji. So he's been in open source for a long time, for years and years and years. And I feel like initially I've always kind of been not like there's a tendency to be like a lone ranger, you know, I like do things alone, but open source doesn't really work like that. And just working with Benji, just discussing things gets ideas to be much, much better.
Yeah.
So what I've found is that, you know, I'm going to adopt this. Thank you so much for the suggestion. I'm definitely going to adopt.
And I just wanted to bring this up at one point too as well. Like the fact that Benji is actually showing you how to accomplish like the next steps or how to organize your project and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of like the idea of mentorship, where you get mentorship from like people telling you like, hey, maybe you should organize your project this way. Like let's create some packages. And then there's like this other thing, which is sponsorship too as well. And like I'm looking at your sponsorship page here, so there's a lot of familiar faces, including myself here.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm super happy. I'm super happy to actually learn about your project too, because I'm all in. And I think the difference between sponsorship and mentorship is like these individuals here are invested in the future of this project and the future of you. And I think it's a big deal to actually put yourself out there and say, I am invested in the future growth of Iffy and his project. And like, I'm happy to like things like discussions, getting that involved in your project so you can get RFCs. Like I'm invested in the future of this project. even without using it, because I'm excited, and I hope everybody else who's expressed excitement, whether it's sponsorship through money or sponsorship through time or just contribution.
Yeah.
Big fan of that.
Also, okay, the coolest thing. Let me show you the coolest thing about this project. If you scroll down to the README.
Yep.
So, oh no. Okay, can you do a hard refresh? Do a hard refresh, and then scroll down to the
Yes.
README. Okay, scroll up a bit. Scroll up a bit. Yeah, yeah, cool. This is the coolest thing about the project. The logo is animated when it comes up. I was like, okay, that's all you need to know. Anyway,
Nice. Is this a GIF?
no, it says SVG. So I
Oh,
didn't know GitHub supported CSS animations, but it does, and I'm gonna make the most of that
I
for every project going forward.
that's honestly that's news to me. Sorry, I need to find your README because I need to see how you did this.
But if you go to, I think the file is in support assets.
Dude.
What you want to see? I had it in the last version as well, but it was like a really tame animation, and people never didn't notice it. But yeah, so
I don't think it's gonna render in the SVG.
if you look at raw, oh yeah,
Okay.
so that's what it's
Excellent.
doing.
I literally right over there have got the SVG animation book from Sarah Drasner. Like this is like the next thing I'm gonna be working on is actually learning how to
Okay.
do animations and SVGs.
I don't know how to do it. I just know I knew enough CSS to kind of
I
get it
mean, if that's
working.
what
So
it is, I know
yeah,
CSS too as well. For some reason, I thought it was a little more complicated than that. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, that's pretty awesome. Like this is all for me personally. This is understandable. I don't know if this is understandable for other people, but you're here, and I'm sure people can reach out to you. I just pulled up your profile too as well. So if you aren't already following Iffy on GitHub, definitely check it out. Um,
Yeah.
I think there is a individual and organization. Oh, sorry, I'm like trying to follow the chat. How do you get sponsorship? Is it project based or individuals? Yes. So they're already answering the conversation. But yeah, GitHub sponsors, you have to apply for it. It's not available in every country. We're actually GitHub sponsors is available in 32 regions. I'm not sure what the difference between a region and a country is, but perhaps, yeah, North America is a region. I'm not sure what the difference is, but 32 regions available. Sign up to join the wait lists. What they do is they approve that you're a viable candidate, that you have contributions or you have projects. I'm not sure exactly what um, the minimum needed to be in sponsors, but definitely highly recommend anybody who wants to get an opportunity to get funded for their open source or have investment. Check it there. And then it is project based, but there's only very few projects who are on sponsors. So you can also submit to join the waitlist for your project. So these are my projects. So if I wanted to, I could get open source sponsored. I have no 501(c) as well.
I was gonna do that for Remirror, and then I was like, yeah, I don't know how to. So I just left it as an
Yeah, I don't think
individual.
that's a hard requirement. I think it's easier if you are a nonprofit. That's what the 501(c) if you're not in the U.S. If no one knew what that was, but I think you're still able to get sponsorship. There's also a way to get sponsorship through other platforms like Patreon or our collective, not our
Yeah,
collective, Open Collective, where you
yeah.
can just provide that link in your repo. So if you do already get sponsorship other places, you can just drop it in there through the sponsorship feature.
Oh, exciting. Yeah,
Excellent.
I would recommend anyone to get involved in open source. It's transformational. You learn so much, and um, I forgot to mention like I got carried away with Remirror stuff, and I know my time is almost up. How
Yeah,
long
we
do I
got
have?
roughly 10 minutes.
Okay, let me just summarize how. So like I think the first time I seriously started contributing was to because I started using TypeScript, and at that time, so this is maybe 2007, end of 2017. At that time, a lot of projects didn't have types for them, and there's a project called Definitely Typed, which is like where you can add types to third-party npm packages, and so those are my first because like it was weird. I needed them, and then
Yeah.
I'd write them. Oh, let me just contribute these back to the community. So those are my first contributions.
Okay.
Like maybe about up to 30 packages. I don't know. I'm assuming that I typed up. So it's not like an amazing amount, but for me it was like the significant first step. I got used to the process of of doing stuff. So if you're like, I think with open source contributions, there's a lot to learn. Like not in an intimidating way, but sometimes you want to focus on one thing. So maybe there's a project that needs documentation. That's a really good way to start because you get to learn like the Git process, or you just get to learn like the whole process around like submitting something, getting it approved, talking to the contributor, to the owner or maintainer, that's what we call them, and having it approved. So it's nice. Like maybe don't start if you haven't done it before. Maybe don't start with TensorFlow contributions, or you can. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can.
Yeah, you might have the expertise, but you just
exactly.
never actually approach the problem or approach contributing.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to contribute to your project, we started the docs and we showed like where the docs live and how the comments exist.
Yeah.
We didn't actually do a proper tour through the project too as well, but it seems like the majority of the code is in the Remirror folder.
Yeah. So there's everything that's like the projects are published is at Remirror / the name. So extensions begin with extension, editors begin with editor. Presets begin with presets and stuff.
Is that all documented somewhere, or do you have a contributing to MD or something?
Yeah, there's a I think it's in docs. So if you go to docs, then contributing MD, it's not great, but it's not terrible. So I'm not
and I think the best time to update your contributing to MD is when someone contributes to the project. So if there's something that's not outlined here. Anybody who wants to contribute to the docs or contribute to the extensions or whatnot, or the next version of this, it's like a perfect time to actually jump at this. I'm curious, what's this PNPM?
Okay, so my old version was using Yarn, and I've just been experimenting with different package managers, and I've really settled on PNPM. I've kind of like there's a few things that Yarn has that are maybe more developer friendly, but it's really, really, really good. So many bugs. It highlighted so many bugs because one thing that Yarn does in a workspace, it hoists every package to the top. Yeah. So if you don't have the right package in your sub package, it thinks you do. So you push up something and then it breaks on everyone's machine and it's all broken. Whereas PNPM, it co-locates the package in the correct directory, which is really cool.
Okay.
It's also really quick, and it's actually being used. I actually learned about it from Microsoft, the Rush Stack repo. So they recommend it as like it's the only package manager, according to Rush Stack, that doesn't have transient dependencies. I don't really know what that means, but they made it sound like a really bad thing. So it's very reproducible. The one issue you may have with PNPM, if you want to use a React Native project, it's actually not the fault of PNPM. PNPM, it's weird saying that so many times. It relies on symlinks. So it uses symlinks to. That's one of the things as well. It only installs a package once. So even if you install it in multiple products on your machine, it's all installed once in one place on your machine. So I always have to clean my node modules, and I save like 10 gigabytes, 20 gigabytes every few months. With PNPM, you don't need to do that because each package is only installed one time, which is really cool. But the React Native doesn't support symlinks. So if you're using PNPM, you may struggle with React Native. The way around that I've found is to use the whole. Anyway, this is going into details you don't.
Yeah, no, I mean it's all fascinating because I've heard of PNPM, but I've never taken a look at it to even understand it.
It's really because I tried. I upgraded to Yarn 2, and Yarn 2 has some really good ideas, but I don't know, it just didn't feel polished. Whereas PNPM felt polished, and also I like the upgrade policy of PNPM. So Yarn 2 is like a very hard breaking change from Yarn 1. PNPM has just recently had a big release from 4 to 5, and I just upgraded and everything still worked. So I like that kind of. It's more incremental, which is really cool.
Okay, but yeah, I think we're sort of like basically moving into the next section that I'd like to talk about. So highly recommend anybody who's interested in more about Remirror, check out the repo, ask questions. What's the best place to ask questions about the project? Like, do you just take them all on the issues?
Yeah, just post a question in the issue. I'm not precious about issues, and if I get invited into discussions, then the discussions will be.
Yeah, well, I'll get you hooked up with discussions, so that way we can have questions added to discussions, and then you can upload them. It's a wonderful product, or a feature rather. GitHub's a product, and this feature is discussions. So I always round up these conversations with, and I'm curious. Actually, we do have one question. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to ask them. But is it best to look for projects to, and this is in regards to contributing, is it best to look for projects to join in languages you are fluent in, or maybe just something you've always wanted to learn?
Hmm. I, I I think it just depends on your personality. I think I'm maybe more of an introvert, so I prefer languages I'm already fluent in because I like doing my learning quietly and then displaying it in public. But someone else may need that engagement to learn quicker. So for them, it would make sense to do it like to learn in public, basically.
Yeah.
I would struggle with that because I'd be like, oh, am I doing it wrong? And constantly questioning myself.
Yeah. So I guess it really just comes down to how do you like to learn? So if you're
Yeah.
fine with sort of brute force or even this like absorbing new knowledge with concrete examples, so like if happen you might not know JavaScript or React or how Babel macros work, like jumping into that full force and just learning it as you go along, like kind of mirrors like how we kind of have to learn and on the job. So if someone gives you a PHP problem, like either you have to learn it or you have to pass it on to somebody else on the team. I personally, to answer that question, I use a lot of contributions. I don't usually contribute to things I don't know. I tend to use things I don't know first. So like if I want to learn like Rust, I'll find something that in like I can get my brain around that's built in Rust, and
Yeah.
then I will use it. And then at that point, I sort of have a context or at least a platform to stand on to be able to start contributing to it if I get that far. Like again, I don't contribute to a ton of things. I do have a project where I can sort of maintain my contributions, and leverage GitHub for that to track stuff. I star like one of them is actually stars. So I think we answered that question. But yes, what a coincidence. But yeah, so I had this up because we sort of round out the conversation where I take a look at your stars. So I just went to slash stars slash your name. I'm curious if anybody wants to drop in the chat GitHub repos of stuff you starred last. I'd love to hear from the chat what they've starred. But I'm curious if you just want to call out any of these projects and tell us why you started them.
So the Benji one, we're working together. I was looking at his profile. I liked it, so I started it. Direction. I recently added bi-directional support to Remirror in the next version.
Oh,
So
for the
now,
language.
yeah. So now, if you type in Arabic, it will automatically switch from to right to left. If you type in English, it'll switch back
Nice.
to left. To right. So that's actually a feature already in the next version. I also added internationalization, but that will be further down. The testing library I hadn't started before, so I was like, oh, I use it a lot. Let me start it.
Nice.
Prosmary change set. It's got some cool stuff in it, and I was trying to build a commit API, and so I'm looking at it. I was trying to read through it. It's really hard to understand the code though,
Yeah.
as in it's like very very detailed. So it's not something I could just fork. So, but I started anyway because I want to use it in the
Yeah.
future. I built my own version, but it's really basic, and I don't. So I want to use that. Just
Hipster
GitHub reporter.
smoothie.
I like the guy's a cool guy. I follow him on Twitter, so just started his stuff,
Okay.
and I use it well. Use it now. Yeah. Basically, if I use your project or if I think it's interesting, I will start your project. So
I think
if you
we're literally the same when it comes to starring stuff. So let me see if I can pull my stuff up. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting projects. So I think I'm gonna star a couple of those in a bit. Um, yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll just briefly mention the stuff I started. We're like right up close to time, but there's a conversation around renaming branches from main to master or default or unstable. Um, oh, it looks like YG is actually you're in the chat, but also you have a contribution, which is awesome. Um, but yeah, there's a basically there was a guy that Godfrey Chan can code, Godfrey Chan. Uh, but he wrote a guide on how you can migrate your branches without breaking stuff because it's kind of a heavy lift. I know GitHub. I guess it was announced last week that we're working on something to make this easier. But until that happens, branch rename is a repo you can actually just read through, figure that out. I have Superlinder. That was another thing that was on Hacker News yesterday. I didn't know it was a thing, but apparently some people at GitHub built a linter to one linter to rule them all,
interesting.
which was yeah. It works with ESLint. It works with some other libraries as
Also,
well.
it uses other linters in. It's like okay,
Yeah, so
that
you
makes
just have
sense.
one lint guide. So if you're writing Ruby and JavaScript in the same mono repo, it should be able to lint it
Oh,
without an issue.
okay, that's cool.
So that's roughly the idea there. Um, we're going to be hopefully in the point where we'll have that working in my project actually, which brings up to, I'll just mention one more project, which is the Pizza Face bot. I have a Discord server, and I had a contribution from Moni, who created a bot and basically pops the Pizza Face in there to do some interactions as well. So Pizza Face is literally going to put that in the chat right now. But yeah, basically Discord bot. So if anybody wants to see how Discord bots work, definitely check that out. And that is it for stars. There
was one just below it, G emoji. It looked interesting.
I've been looking at I was going to bring this up too in the conversation and forgot, because you were talking about, so GitHub has emojis in our, like in all the markdown. This is it. This is how it works. So if you wanted to ever figure out how GitHub does emoji, there's also a So yeah, it's built in Ruby, but there's also GitHub emojis markdown. Oh, it's a cheat sheet. I forgot a complete list. Yeah. So if you ever wanted to know, I guess you could star this. How come I can't? There we go. Click it. Still waiting. Oh, hopefully GitHub's not giving me 500s. But anyway, there's a whole list of all the emojis that GitHub uses. So if you ever wanted to know that. Also, if you didn't know, you could actually star gist as well. Yeah, it looks like it's gone. I'm not sure if that's my browser or if this is what that is. But yeah, here's the entire list of all emojis ever on GitHub. So definitely check it out.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay, no, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so we're right up on time. I'm super appreciative of you coming on, chatting about Remirror. I hope everybody in the chat has a chance to check it out, test it with their projects. That'd be super awesome. And also contribute back. So obviously it's a real need for documentation. So if you have interest in working on documentation for a really cool project, definitely check it out. And then Iffy, is there, besides your GitHub, is there other places people can find you and your work?
Yeah, I'm only really on Twitter. So Twitter is the same username. Basically, I have the same username on every platform. So just search IFIOKJR and you'll find me. I don't really use social media though, so I barely tweet. But I can tweet more if people like it.
Yes. Follow for the tweets.